Hi, in this video we'll be going over fields, so declaring variables as fields. So a field is a variable that is declared at the class level. So basically a field is a global variable, but in C# they call it a field. So far all the variables that we looked at have been local variables, except for the constant variable that we learned about last time. So a local variable is declared inside a method and is visible only to statements in that method, which we already learned. Another type of variable is a field, which is a variable that is declared inside a class but not inside any of the methods. So basically you can use a field scope as an entire class. So that means any method can access it. Basically every method shares the same variable. The whole class can share it, and it also should be accessible. If it's a public field, then it should be accessible by other classes as well. And if it's a protected field, which we'll talk about that stuff later on, anything that inherits the class can also access the variable. But if it's private, you won't be able to access the field outside the class. So a field scope is an entire class. So when you declare a field, all the methods in the class can access the variable. So it's the same as other languages. It's called a field instead of a global variable. So fields are declared at the top of a class before any of the methods. So we'll do an example in a sec. So you can so when you declare a field or declare and initialize a field, you can add some blank lines after the class's opening brace and write the field declaration in that space. So we'll do an example so we can, I think I've already kind of been doing them, but now we're actually talking about it. So a field goes here. So we can declare a field here. You can declare and initialize it if you want, or you could just declare a field here and initialize the field in the constructor. But you can just declare and initialize it up here. So you could have a private field. So you can declare and initialize here a field that's initialized to 0 named val. So field declarations are written like any other variable declaration, except that an access modifier usually appears before the data type. In this example, the keyword private is the access modifier. An access modifier specifies how a class member can be accessed by code outside the class. So in this example, so I just said that. So the keyword private is the access modifier. An access modifier specifies how a class member can be accessed by code outside the class. When you use a private access modifier in a field declaration, the field cannot be accessed by code outside the class. It can be accessed only by the methods that are inside the class, or accessed basically just in the class. So it's a good practice to make fields private because private fields are hidden from code outside the class. So this can prevent bugs or hacks from getting into the program. So we'll learn about more of this later on. So declare a field private if you're only going to access it in that class, but if you need to access a variable or a field, outside the class, then you can name it public, but most of the time it should probably just be private because you don't want anything to be able to access or change the data. I don't think we already talked about this, but so we'll be learning about other access modifiers later on. And C# automatically makes a field private. And if the compiler doesn't show that, it's better, because sometimes it won't automatically change that. I guess with older compilers, you'll just write a field here like int val. So if we have like an int val here, pretend I wasn't using this compiler, some old compiler like some Notepad++ or something, it probably wouldn't change that to private, but really when it compiles it would be private, but it's best to just name them private so whoever's reading the code would know that it's private. So in the previous field declaration, the val is initialized with the value 0. If a field is a variable of a numeric data type, such as int, double, or decimal, it will be initialized to 0 by default. If you do not explicitly initialize it with a value, so it'll be 0 basically. So this will, if we just have an int val, so it's actually private and 0. But it's a good idea to also write 0 just in case someone's reading it and doesn't understand. It's like an old compiler or something once again. So if you don't initialize a string field, it begins with a special value known as null. We'll talk about null later on, but usually null when we talk about objects, but basically null means that something doesn't point to an object. We'll talk about that later on. So in a form, fields are useful for storing pieces of data that must be shared among the form's event handlers. So we'll do an example. I think we'll probably actually do that now. Actually, I'm not sure, did we already do this one? I don't think we have done this one already. Maybe not, okay, so that's fine. So there's two of them, one's a longer one, but we'll start with this one. So basically we'll just have 3 buttons. So we'll have 3 buttons here. I'll just drag them on. Actually, so I'll place one here, place one Actually, we'll probably do the naming and stuff first, so we'll just have so we'll have one here, or actually it doesn't really matter, we'll just have one here. Move that one over here. So this one we'll name it something. I think in Android they have a thing where they call these children. So they have like you name it, you name the child, but it's like because you can have components in themselves. We're gonna be talking about that, but it's a little bit different. I don't think they call them children in C#. But if you put a component on, then you can also call this component a child, and you just name it here. So then here we'd, for example, name the child. Show name button. Oh, what happened there? So that's alright. So yeah, so basically in C# it's a little different than Android. So in C#, I think possibly later on they might be doing something similar to that. We'll talk about it when we move on to groups and panels and the different layouts. But right now we'll just have one component. So we named it actually a control. So we'll turn we'll change the size with the font. I'll have to change auto size to true as well. So we'll just have we'll change that one here. So we'll just have so we'll just change the text property here to show name, or display name is fine. Oops. Okay, so we'll change the name here of this one, of this button, from button 2 to we'll change the button to let's come up with a random name here. Let's go with yam, like a yam. Okay, so we'll have one button here, and then we'll have the text here to so we'll just say actually we'll change the auto size to false as well. Actually, sorry, to true. The text will change to name, or set name to yam. We'll change the size as well. That one we could just, doesn't really matter, so we'll just have the third button down here. change the button to I should go with my cat's name. One of my cat's names, so we'll just change name here. So we'll just call it Jasmine button. We'll turn auto size to true as well. We'll change the size again to something a bit bigger so we can see that. So here we'll have so text will go with set name to Jasmine. That should be all. So I think we have one. This might have gotten messed up because it looks like we have button 1 click, and then button 2 click. So I might have to delete some stuff from the other file again if it doesn't work. Okay, so let's just click these again just to make sure. Okay, that's saying it's button 1. So there seems to be a glitch here. It didn't actually take the name. This one's button 2. And then the last one has the name. I think you need to actually, we might have clicked it before by accident, but I think even if you set the name after, it doesn't change, which is not good, because for example, in Android that does change when you use the drag and drop editor. Basically the same thing, the design window here. It automatically updates after you, like if you change it later on or whatever, the name. Now all the code's messed up in the back end, so we'll have to go and probably delete stuff after. Okay, so let's look at the event handler code now. I'm sorry, I just hit the mic by accident. So we'll just go to the, okay, so we're gonna have to declare some okay, so initially I believe we're gonna have a name set to something. So here we'll just, with like a field, if I say global, forgive me, I just meant, so if I said global, I meant field. I may use those kind of as the same word here and there because I'm kind of used to other languages. But it's the same thing, you can think of it as a global field, it doesn't really matter. The correct terms on a form, I guess, on a test would be a field. But you can put like as a comment that it's a global field, it's kind of accessible everywhere in the class, or if it's public, it's accessible outside the class as well. If it's private, it's only accepted inside the class, and if it's protected, it can be inherited in other classes only. So here we could just have so private string, name val points to, we'll just set whatever name works. So we'll just set a random name here, and then we'll have so below here we'll go to button1.click. So here we'll just set the name to Azula. So private void show, so it should be show name button. I think there's a glitch, but we'll just go with it for now. So here we'll say, so this should be the show name button, I think. So show name button, which we have the text as display name. In the event handler, the code is that's for some reason the identifier of the variable name is button1_click. It should have changed. It didn't change, so we'll just try this first. So here we'll create a dialog box. Whoops. So we'll say message box. So we'll have message box here. So remember, a dialog box is the same thing as a message box in C#. So it's just like a pop-up box. In C#, it's the same thing, basically the same thing. So message box is going to be like a pop-up window. So we'll say .show, and then we'll call .show, and we'll pass in name val. It's going to show the name val that it's currently set to. For example, here we're setting it to Azula, or Azalea, whatever. Azula. So here, whatever it is, AZALEH. So messagebox.show name val. So in that case, it's going to show the name Azula when we click the display name button, or show name button. Kind of a pop-up window will display, and it'll say the name Azula. So then over here we have private. Sorry, I think this one's a glitch. There might be a glitch in here, so we'll come back. So I believe we'll go to button 2 in this case. So here we're just going to set the name. So initially it's Azula, then we have the name is set to Ilyam. Should be, name val points to Ilyam. The string Ilyam. Think of like a yam, like the vegetable. Those sweet yams, or your sweet potato. So now if we press the display name button, it should change the name from Azula to Ilyam. So that's all we really need, just for the purpose of explaining or demonstrating how to use a field, which is accessible by all the methods. For example, instead of having a local variable like local, such as so we have a name. So if we have a name val here, and we just hover over this. Sorry, we go private. No, yeah, I think. No, let's go with string name val. Okay. Let's see if there's a warning here. So this one. So it's going to be different than, I'm not sure, I think you should be able to do this in C#, but But you should be able to declare a name val here, which is a field, which is global, which should be different than this local name val. And this one is, it's not a local. Should be able to work, but just know that if you do that, then it's going to be different than that one. So if you know what I mean, one's local and one's a field. So one's global and one's a local one. So just be careful with that. You may not. You may probably want to just define it another name just in case, so no one gets confused, or you don't get confused later on when you're trying to access them, access the variables or fields at a different part of the code. So in this case here, we're just having the let's call it a global field here is set to it's set to the string ilyam. So it's changed from Azala. So we should have, actually, you know what, this should be, I think this should be in this one actually. So we'll just copy this. Sorry about that, so we'll just take this out and paste it over here, so we'll just cut it. And we should be able to paste that one just right here. We'll just comment the exception. So button 2, yeah, that should be fine. So in the last one here, we'll just set the name val to Jasmine. That should be fine, so we'll just save it, and then we'll just run it just to show. So I don't think you'll be able to see this one, but I'll include it. I'll just make sure that it's working, and then I'll include it at the end of the video for you guys. I think there might have been something wrong with that. Yeah, okay, so there's something wrong with that, so we'll have to go into the back-end code, which we'll talk about later on. So here I'm just going to click form1.cs, and then under I'll click form1.designer.cs. So I'm just going to look for any red lines associated with button1_click. Actually here, so I'm going to click this Windows Form Designer generated code. Then I'm going to search for those red lines associated with button1_click, just to see if that'll solve the problem here. So see a button 2 click, button 1 click. Didn't see anything, so let me just try deleting that extra line of code first. So we'll save that again. Try again here. Okay, so it did, actually you guys won't be able to see this properly because my, I don't have a proper recorder, but basically the Windows recorder doesn't catch extra windows for some reason, so like it doesn't catch pop-up windows, because you need a screen recorder for that. There is one, but I haven't got it to, it doesn't work with my microphone, I think. But basically I'll show you guys the GUI, but So it does work. I'm just gonna show you guys in 1 second here. Okay, so it does work. Alright, so in 1 sec I'll show you guys what it looks like. Basically just exactly like this thing here. Whoops, where did it go? It just looks like this thing here when we click this button, display name. So it'll pop up with a window that says Azula, like a pop-up window. And if we click the set name to Iliam, then we'll click that. Then we have to click display name again, the button. When the pop-up window will come up, it'll say name set to Iliam. And then if I click the set name to Jasmine, I'll click that and then display name. It'll set, the pop-up window will come up and then it'll say name set to Jasmine. If I click the set name to Iliam again and click display name, the name will get set to Iliam. If I click, then the pop-up window will come back up. Will come on or come back up, and then it'll say that the name was set to Iliam. So we could have had a third button here, set name back to Azula, but we didn't. But if you want to, you can include that. So that's pretty much it. So in 1 second, I'll show you guys what it looks like.